Mr. Hill was well known around my town. He was the infamous town hobo, the stain on an otherwise fancy suburban town. Everybody in town disliked him. They would throw bottles of old food at him when he was riding his bike. One lady, Mrs. Durst, poured a scalding cup of coffee on him outside our local library, while he was having a smoke for making her grandson upset. Her grandson is 14, and he was smiling as she did it. I watched it happen in utter disbelief. Mrs. Durst now has a lifetime ban from the library's Keurig, but that's beside the point. I was just a patron then. When I decided I didn't particularly care for a life stuck in a 10x10 room, working on pipeline layouts 8 hours a day, I went back to school and I graduated with an MLIS. That is what led me to working at the very library Mr. Hill liked to hang out around. He came in every day to use the computers, and aside from the occasional outburst when they ran slow, he wasn't ever a real problem for me. In fact, I grew quite the soft spot for him after a while. I'm the digital services librarian, so I saw him every day. We picked up an odd habit of picking on each other. I would smile and I would give my cheeriest "good morning" when the doors opened every day. He would wave his hands and say, "Oh, fuck you," or "Who are you to tell me what kind of morning I'm having?" And we would both laugh. I found out that he had been squatting at a house down the street from the library for 2 years. He seemed not to mind that they had no electricity or running water. He just wanted to have a place to protect him from the elements. I asked him why he didn't try to just work and get back up on his feet, and he shrugged. "I don't know," he replied. "Every time I'm doing good, something knocks me down again." He let out a defeated little laugh. "I was married before. My wife was a truly special woman. She always made my day." He paused. "She had a habit of loving everyone a little bit too much, though." He sighed and he looked away. I guess what that meant by his tone and his reluctance to finish that sentence. After she left, I just lost it. I haven't been the same since. I haven't had a need for a place of my own since then. All I ever needed was her." He smiled wistfully. A few weeks later, he wasn't at the library when it had opened. I was a bit worried as this was a rare occurrence. I figured that he would just come cycling along eventually, so I put it out of my mind. When he finally did show up, he was tense. "Good morning. Where have you—" I started. No, it's not. They're putting me out. They're selling the damn house. I have 24 hours to get out." He said. "What are you gonna do?" I asked him. "Well, I'm gonna be on the street," he yelled. Everybody in the computer lab turned to look. "Hey, let's go out in the hallway and talk," I suggested. "I don't see what the fucking point is," he spit, but followed me anyway. When we were out in the hallway, we stared at each other for a minute, as if willing the other one to speak first. "Sorry," he said finally. I smiled at him. I was weighing options in my mind, things that I could do to help him. After another uncomfortable silence, I said what I was thinking. You could come stay with me if you want. I have an extra room, and I know my wife wouldn't mind." My wife Emma absolutely would mind. She despised my habit of taking in strays, as she put it. "Oh, I couldn't do that," he said. "I have night terrors. I would wake you up at all hours of the night screaming." "No, really, Mr. Hill. Call me Tim," he said. Mr. Tim, I couldn't live with myself knowing you were out on the street in this weather. You would have your own room, a bathroom. You would be on the opposite end of the house from my wife and I. Really, it would be no trouble at all. Just until you got back up on your feet. I said, words tumbling out of my mouth like vomit. Look, I've lived alone for so long I wouldn't know how to live with people. I'm alright, really. He said, and he started to walk away. Well then, come over for dinner, I said to his back. He turned back towards me. I have a shed that we can put your stuff in. You can stay a day or two and have a shower and some hot food, and I can drive you to the library in the mornings. If it doesn't work, no problem. Damn, you're persistent, he said. Fine, but just a couple of days. Awesome, I said. What's your favorite food? He thought about it for a second. Meatloaf and mashed potatoes. He smiled. Sounds like a plan. I replied with a smile. I'll pick you up at your house tomorrow morning and we can bring your stuff to my house. I called Emma, and though she was annoyed, she always found it endearing when I brought somebody new into our home. Fine, she said after me telling her the whole story. But you'll both be doing chores around here. The next day, I brought my truck to the address that he had given me. I loaded up all of his earthly possessions, 2 bookshelves, a ton of books, and a toolbox into the back of my truck. And as per our agreement, he insisted that all of it go into the shed. I'm not gonna stay long, he announced, as we had finished taking everything out. Just a couple of days. He made me promise that if I woke up to him screaming, I wouldn't get out of bed to check. I told him that we always had 2 large fans in a room, so we probably wouldn't be bothered anyway. I don't know about that. I just don't want to hurt ya. So stay the hell away if it happens. I simply nodded in response. 2 weeks in, and he was still with us. He was happy, well-fed, showered and wearing clean clothes. He said he hadn't suffered from night terrors since the night he had moved in with us. We were excited. I think you healed me. He laughed over morning coffee one day. Emma had taken quite the shine to him, despite her initial reservations. He was a witty, intelligent man. He would always clean the house when he came home from the library, and he was an excellent cook. Everything was wonderful for a few months. We all meshed well, and gave each other enough space to breathe and also enjoyed spending time talking together. Meal times were the best, spent talking about dreams and ambitions and what it really meant to be a human. I think we all have a purpose, Tim said. I just think that sometimes our purpose is obscured. Obscured by what? Emma replied. Tim took a sip of his coffee and then he looked at her. Demons. He laughed a little. Look, I'm not a religious man, but I know that there are demons in this world. I've seen them personally. Sometimes, he stopped, taking a breath. Sometimes they take what you love most away from you, and you can't do shit about it. You just sit there, frozen. You can't save them. Is that what happened to your wife? I asked. Emma glared at me from across the table. She was fond of doing what I do. He smiled. Taking in strays? Right, Emma. Emma blushed, and he waved his hands dismissively. One of those strays abducted her. From the blood found on the bed, the police decided that she was murdered. Even though there was no body. They thought I did it, but with no body and no evidence, the case went cold. He was shaking a little and I touched his hand. I saw it happen. I saw this shadowy figure on top of her. I could hear her scream, but I was paralyzed. I couldn't help her. I couldn't. His voice broke. I couldn't save her. The next morning, they were both gone. I was in hell. No one said anything. We stared at our cups, coffee cooling. I'm sorry, Emma said. He smiled at her. When his night terrors did start, we awoke to screams of terror. My wife jumped out of bed to check and I grabbed her arm. We need to help him, she yelled. No, he said to let him be. He'll be fine, I replied, trying to sound calm. It was 4:15 a.m. At 4:42, his screams had stopped, but we weren't going back to sleep. I suggested that we get up and have a cup of coffee, and Emma agreed. We heard Tim get up and head over to shower around 5:30. At 6, he came into the kitchen. Sorry I woke y'all up, he said, head down. It's fine, really, I responded. Yeah, we understand, Emma agreed. Do you mind if I wash my sheets? He asked. Fear makes me sweat. No, go ahead, the washer is free, Emma responded, smiling. And then you can come and have coffee with us. Yeah, he said. I'll do that. We left for the library that day and Emma gave us both a hug. Have a good day, y'all, she smiled. We will, I said. You too. Tim and I didn't talk on the way to the library, or after we had gotten there. Even on the way home, he was quiet. The night terrors happened regularly after that. Every night, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. There was no pattern to it. And we started to ignore it. Emma had gotten earplugs. Every morning that he woke up, he would shower and then he would wash his sheets. One day on the way to the library, I asked him what he saw during these night terrors. My wife's murder, he said. She's always there beside me, and then he comes and kills her, all over again. Emma had started to get antsy. She was concerned about him, but also how dangerous he could be. How do we know that it wasn't him who had killed his wife? She hissed at me one day. How do we know that we won't be next? Don't be ridiculous, Emma, I told her. There's no reason to think that he did anything. Besides, he never leaves his room. He told us that he was paralyzed. One day at work, she called me. You need to come home right now and bring Tim. She was speaking rapidly, a voice on the edge of panic. I caught something on video. Something that you need to see. I'm outside. I'm in the car. I'm gonna come get you. No, wait, shit, you have the car. Just come home. Right now. A video? What do you mean you have a video? I asked. Don't ask any questions, just come now. She screamed at me. I told my boss that I had an emergency at home and I took Tim with me when we left. By the time we had got home, there were police there. Emma had ran to me, falling into my arms. There was blood on the bed. There was blood on the bed, she cried. I was worried and I hid a camera. A policeman walked up to us then. Ma'am, there was no one in the house. But due to the video, we're gonna have somebody watch the premises and try to catch them breaking in. He looked at Tim and then said, Sir, can you follow me inside? We need you to watch the video footage. See if you can identify the perpetrators. Tim was shaking. I walked inside with them, completely dazed. Apparently Emma had hidden a video camera in Tim's room a couple of weeks ago, but had finally gotten worried enough to watch the footage while we were at work today. We live in a safe neighborhood. And generally, we keep our front door unlocked, but since the backyard is gated, that door stays open. As Tim watched the footage, he fell to his knees. It showed two people, a man and a woman, entering his room. The man injected something between his toes, and then the woman lays on the bed, and then the man crawls on top of her and stabs her. Tim is obviously awake at this point, but can't move or scream. The man then takes a bottle of what looks like blood and pours it all over the bed, and the woman lies still for a moment, staring at Tim, and then they get up and walk out. "Lydia! What the hell, Lydia?" Tim screamed, falling to the floor. His wife and the man that had lived with them were the ones in the video. We didn't know why they were doing this, or what they were doing torturing him. We tried to convince him to stay with us, but he was broken. He left the next day. Emma and I fell back into a routine of our own. The cops would still pass by, but they didn't wait outside of our house every night. I didn't see Tim at the library anymore either. I missed him. I wish that he would have stayed with us. One night, I awoke to muffled screams. I was unable to move and I could barely breathe. I saw two people standing over my wife. I tried to scream, I tried to fight, but nothing would work. The difference between my story and Tim's was when I was able to move again, my wife was very much dead. I screamed my throat raw and I tried to resuscitate her. I called 911. I clung to her lifeless body as they tried to pull me away. They had pronounced her dead on the scene. We don't know where the killers are now, and why they did what they did to my Emma. The only thing that they left behind was a word scrawled on the wall in their blood. Nightmare.